My most anticipated game for the rest of the year is Starfield, but second place is a hard choice. There's one of PlayStation's best first-party studio sequel to a game I loved, but admittedly thought wasn't on the level of Horizon or God of War. There's a new 2D Mario game that's going to have some insane level design and quite possibly be the Breath of the Wild for 2D platformers and completely rethink the whole genre. But I have to give the title of my second most anticipated game to Assassin's Creed Mirage for what it represents to the entire industry. Let's start off with the statement that I like Ubisoft, not as a company. There have been disgusting allegations launched against it recently, but I like its products. They're by no means industry leaders, but putting them in the same boat as Activision and EA feels a little ridiculous to me. They're like the modern version of THQ, the junk food developers. They make fun games, but no one looks to them for innovation. I appreciate the fact that a large percentage of their teams still make single-player games, when usually a trend-chasing company would have the entire staff working on live service games, praying to God one of them succeeds. But believe it or not, Assassin's Creed Mirage is one of the most innovative titles this year. Not for any of the content in the game, but for what it stands for. It's a declaration against the insatiable lust of gamers for extended playtimes and for developers giving in to those demands, leading them to making games that feel stretched out. I'll put it into the simplest terms I can manage. We need shorter games. If this industry is going to survive, then it's an absolute necessity that the 10 to 20 hour game returns quickly. If we're not going to sacrifice our need for ultra-realistic graphics that ultimately add very little, and are the primary reason games take too long to make, then at the bare minimum, we need to be accepting that developers want to make less content. Sean Layden, the former head of PlayStation, said it himself, quote, "The cost of creating games has increased. Some studies show that's gone up 2 times every time a console generation advances. The problem with that model is it's just not sustainable. So if games keep getting bigger, unless the amount of gamers grows at the same size, something is eventually going to give. That's why it's so important to pivot to shorter games now before things start to get truly crazy." I've already seen this insane notion of quantity over quality beginning to take hold. I can remember the outrage at Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart for being a 10-hour game with a $70 price tag. Buddy, I can't think of a better use for $70 on PS5 than buying Rift Apart. Even more recently, people are expecting Baldur's Gate 3 to raise the standard for RPGs, and now every Western RPG dev is expected to make games just as big as this one. It's madness. How can you want games with repetitive and drawn-out content just to justify your purchases? Is your time being filled really more important to you than it being rewarded? Shorter games are a good thing, not only for developers but players as well. It often leads to more polished experiences that are able to push their ideas to the limit through their more focused scope. I mean, look at Hi-Fi Rush. That's the second best game this year after Zelda, and you're a fool if you own an Xbox and haven't played it. But speaking of Zelda, it's understandable that most players don't want to lose the 50-hour epic journeys that are becoming more and more standardized in video games, and I don't want to lose that either, but they should be rewarded and reserved only for the studios that have the talent to make games that can be engaging for that long. I can't even count how many JRPGs I've played whose main problem is that their gameplay isn't engaging enough to support the full weight of their runtime. That's not to say these are bad games, just ones that outstay their welcome. I think that long games should only be left to the top studios that have enough experience and talent to make games that can be enjoyed for long periods. Nintendo First Party, Rockstar, PlayStation Studios, CD Projekt, these are the teams that can make incredible games that take 40 hours to finish. I'm not joking when I say that I would celebrate a Dragon Quest game with a campaign that could be finished in 30 hours. And if there's one franchise that not only can't support its own weight, but collapses under it, then it's Assassin's Creed. Odyssey is a game that I had to try and finish 3 times because I just couldn't get engaged enough to complete it. I haven't even played Valhalla because it came out during the busy console launch period and I only had time for one massive game before Cyberpunk, and I chose Yakuza. After hearing it's even longer than Odyssey, I've always been reluctant to try it. I will play it one of these days, but probably not anytime soon. So for Assassin's Creed to return to its roots, where the developers have boldly claimed that the game is 20 hours, not as a warning to temper expectations, but as a declaration against grueling development to make a game that's too long, it's a triumph for developer and player alike. My heart has weakened every time a short AAA game comes out and it underperforms. Less so with the Callisto Protocol, which had some baffling design decisions, but it withered when Hi-Fi Rush underperformed. I am praying, now that one of the biggest single-player franchises is shortening its length, that it becomes a massive success, and finally shows the industry that you can make the same amount of money for significantly less work, and it leads to a slew of shorter, more focused games.